Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It's your boy Cinnamon Dude, and I just got done watching Sandy Cheeks Saving Bikini Bottom, and I have to talk about this. Now, let's just start off here with my positives, because there's a lot that I want to talk about with this, and I will rant off eventually. But with my positives in the movie, I want to start off with the animation. The animation is just top tier and beautiful, and I could tell that from the trailers. So when characters do certain cartoony things and things that they would do in the cartoon, it looks so good translated into 3D, and it worked so well. Like, for example, there's a few times in here where Mr. Krabs goes pale, and the way it transitions to that is freaking amazing. And the scenes where SpongeBob dries out are really good animated. And also, when the movie's in full animation, when they're all in Bikini Bottom, that's when this movie is at its best. At its core, the scenes where this movie is entirely 3D CGI animated, it works so well and is so good. But the movie starts to fail and fall apart when we going into the real world. Which is another thing that I'm mixed on, because this movie takes no time at all sending you into the real world and starting the story. There's no build up, which I like, but I didn't like that we got rid of those animation scenes so soon, because that's what was holding this movie together. Because as soon as we got to these real world sequences, the movie was just starting to fall apart for me. For example, the human villain was very cartoony and weak and was just getting on my nerves. Also, like, her whole gimmick and her motivation is so weak, it's not even funny. Her motivation is she literally wants to clone all the people in SpongeBob and Bikini Bottom so she can sell them as toys. And it doesn't, that's just not a good plot. And especially with as wacky and as goofy as it is, I swear the freaking screenwriter in here was the same one they had from Good Burger 2. And yeah, with a plot like this, there's no wonder this movie was originally a tax write-off. And yes, that's going to be so cruel to say, but if they would go back and make a fully animated SpongeBob movie, like this movie teases at you, it shows you, but it won't give you or deliver the entire thing. On the subject of going into the real world in this movie, there were some scenes that I did like, for example, Sandy Cheeks' family. Even though I do feel like they were underutilized and brushed off towards the third act, they were an enjoyable part of this movie. Also, this movie put some new stuff into the SpongeBob lore, like specifically why Sandy was even in Bikini Bottom in the first place, which had to start to scratch on something interesting, but once again, they found something good and brushed it off to the side towards the end because they want to focus on this wacky human villain. And I get it, this movie's made for kids, but there's some kids' movies out there that are amazing. I go back and look at some of the animated movies that have came out recently, like Migration, for example. That movie was awesome. Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. You can make a kids' movie and it can still be good. Inside Out 2, and even Garfield. But part of this movie was just almost unwatchable. Every time we were in the human laboratory with these wacky human villains, the CGI and live action did not mesh well at all. It felt like something you would get from like the early 2010s when they were constantly doing those like child live action reboots. Like, for example, it reminded me of something from Alvin and the Chipmunks, like the 2000s ones, if they were just executed very poorly. Like, there's a whole sequence where Sandy and SpongeBob are at a water park, and it's just so lazily done, especially with the animation and the CGI effects, that it just doesn't work. And when you look into it, 90% of this movie's budget went towards the beginning, and every time where they're fully animated, because right then it looks beautiful, the movie is good in those scenes, but that's like not even 15% of the movie, if I had to take a guess. The rest is just all there, and like I said earlier, there were some good ideas, some good directions you could go with the Sandy Cheeks movie, but you made it more focused around SpongeBob. And the reason I'm saying that is because, well, the strongest parts of this movie is when we're just following Sandy and SpongeBob. But between the two of them, SpongeBob steals the show. And when you get down to the main villain, her main purpose and who she mainly wants is SpongeBob once again. Which, isn't this movie supposed to be, like, focused on Sandy Cheeks? This feels more like a movie set in the SpongeBob universe that focuses on all the characters that just shows some ideas within Sandy Cheeks. And once again, like I was saying, every time this movie starts to scratch into a really good plot that could lead us into a good executed Sandy Cheeks movie, we brush that off to the side once again so we can focus on this terrible human villain and this terrible plot. I'm not even joking when I tell you that I was cringing my butt off at some scenes. But there is like one joke that really got me, and it was just because of how bad the acting was. Like, this movie is laughably bad. In specifics, there's a scene where they bring in kids to test the SpongeBob toys, and they're like tossing them around, yelling toys, acting all crazy, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is just bad. To be honest, this movie is very low quality even for kid content. But once again, once we get out of that, dive into the fully animated section, oh my gosh, this movie worked so well right there. And that's what you should have stuck with. Not live action CGI hybrid, a CGI movie, because that's when this movie started the most. I wish this movie was fully animated and had a bigger budget, then I would love it. And I would still want the inclusion of Sandy Cheeks' family. It's just almost you get to the final result and it's just like they were so underutilized, it felt ridiculous to even include them. So I do feel like if you're going to do that, you need to have Sandy Cheeks' family into it more than they are. Because I really just feel like they're just not there. Sandy Cheeks' family, the whole thing of Sandy maybe being a spy, you get down to it, the movie shows you what it can be and then brushes it off, and it's just so frustrating. Especially from someone who's a SpongeBob fan that has always wanted a CGI animated movie, and now that we get one, it just didn't even work the way I wanted to. Which sucks, because if you knew how strong of a start this was, dude, the start of this movie was just going strong. It had me hooked. And then we got to the Boots Laboratory part, which I just couldn't do it after that. Anyway, those were my thoughts on the Sandy Cheeks movie. I'm going to give it overall a 3.5 out of 10. I know that's terrible to say, but I'm just being honest. If it wasn't for those scenes where it's fully animated, I would be giving this a 0 out of 10. But other than that, did you guys like the Sandy Cheeks movie? Did you hate it? Tell me what you guys thought about it. And, well, if you guys agreed with me. Anyway, it's been your boy, Cinema Dude. Thank you guys for checking out this review, and I'll see you all later.